Which foot are you starting
I'll
off
start
with?
with left.
Okay.
Alright.
Make sure you give me enough room to like step as well. We've got to get enough room.
Alright.
Yeah, we've got to have enough room each.
Ethan, do you want to check the camera and make sure we're all in frame?
Don't worry about the stepping.
Yeah, you're all in front.
No, I mean when we're moving.
No, it's just the arms.
Alright.
What?
And you can count us in as well. We all good?
Yeah.
Alright, you want to count us in?
3, 2, 1, action.
Hi, my name is Matthew Davis and this is the behind the scenes and reflection video for the final project for my UAL Level 3 Extended Diploma in Creative Media course. Around this time last year I was making this exact same sort of video for my first year's at college final project, which was called Noctophobia, so this is going to be a very similar sort of video. I'm going to talk through all the stages of pre-production, main production and post-production, but let's get started on how I came up with the concept itself. Coming up with the concept for a project almost on command is very tricky. With most projects it comes naturally, you'll just be living life as usual and then an inspiration hits, but when you're told you have to come up with ideas, it can be so hard. I was working on a script for a Star Wars fan project in my free time, so at first I thought I'd just be doing that, but after giving it some thought, I wasn't too confident that I could get it done in time, and wouldn't want to compromise on anything and end up with a worse off finished project. Ironically now with hindsight, I actually think I could have filmed and edited it quite easily, but I wasn't sure at the time and made a sensible decision. Then I thought about maybe adapting one of my games that I made into live action. I was thinking Cryptid Hunter, but it'd be very tricky to create non-human characters realistically in such little time. Eventually, I figured why couldn't I go back to my roots when I made my Spider-Man films? I feel at home in the superhero genre, but I've evolved my skills enough to make much better projects. This one would be fully original, with my own characters and storyline. There would be dialogue, which is new for me, and it would be more of a comedy with superhero motifs and references more than it would be a straightforward superhero film. Almost a parody, but I'm not sure if I'd go quite that far. Now, the project proposal is the first thing you're supposed to do to make for a final project, but for me, I wasn't quite sure what the project was going to be yet, so the first thing I actually did was create concept art for the characters of Steve and Marsman, to get a feel for the tone of the project. After that, I actually wrote some of the script too. I wanted to make 100% sure that this was an idea I wanted to follow through on, and after seeing the characters visually and imagining some of the scenes, I decided it was absolutely something I'd enjoy making. So it was then that I started the project proposal. It was a pretty simple process after that, when you've already got some basic design and script documents to work with. I just wrote about the themes of the project, the characters, the influence, and then a rough project timeline. I've never been very good at time management on my projects, however, so I knew that there was a very slim likelihood of me sticking to the timeline. I tried my best to stick to it, but some days I needed breaks, and sometimes I had a passion to work on other things on the projects instead of the things that I said I'd do. Like if I was supposed to be writing the script one week, but I instead wanted to do the storyboard, I'd follow that feeling knowing that it'd make for a much better product. In terms of research for this project, it was mainly rewatching old content that I knew it would be similar to. I knew it would almost be a parody of old serialised TV shows from the 60s, especially the old Batman show, so I rewatched Batman the movie starring Adam West. It's really campy and fun, and I just knew that the world of my project should feel like that, but have a more comedic twist. I thought the antagonist, the visuals, and the editing could all feel like those old TV shows, but what if the protagonists were all fed up with the idea of fighting these over-the-top villains for years? It could be so tiring, and that being a hero is more of a work obligation than something they want to do now. A lot of that style of humour is very similar to Edgar Wright's writing for films like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, where the main characters are just everyday people, but the editing is hyperactive and always moving. I took a lot of influence from the editing in those films, as they've always been a massive inspiration for me when creating pretty much anything. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World especially was a huge influence on this film for the way it has comic book style images overlaid over live action footage. As much as I wanted this film to feel like an old TV show, I always wanted it to feel as well like a comic book come to life. Marsman's character design is actually a really interesting story by itself, because I've had his character design for so long now. I like to think I was around 9 when I first designed him, and it was on a Minecraft Scheme Creator program. He was this little red guy with a zigzag pattern on his chest and a yellow triangle on his face and white eyes. I thought he looked so cool. I actually made him with the help of one of my best friends called Braden, and we called him Rocket Man at first, but after realising that name was already taken, we renamed him Marsman. I've tried using his design now in so many films, and I'll show some screenshots of the times that I've tried in the past now. The project just never worked though, as I was too inexperienced at the time, and I wanted to do the character justice, so all of those old films were completely scrapped. I must have attempted that character around 5 times at least on screen, and I'm very happy to say that I'm proud of it this time around. It feels like Marsman finally has a decent story and character, and that this iteration of Marsman is here to stay. The other characters in comparison have a fairly rubbish story for their design. I wanted Steve to be similar to Superman, so I stuck an S on the jumper I used in Noctophobia. I knew it would fit Tom because he'd worn that jumper before, so it was fairly simple. Captain Samurai was just a jumble of old costume parts I had in my costume box at home, and then I named him after what he looked like. And Professor Potato was a reused Scarecrow costume from a Batman fan film I failed at making a while ago. I feel like there's a lesson from this though. If you have parts from old projects that you can reuse, you absolutely should. Old ideas may not be great at the time, but with more experience and if done right could end up as a far better complete project than what you were originally planning for. Marsman wasn't fit for any of my previous projects, but he was right for this one. And this project ended up being so much better than what my Batman fan film was going to be a while ago. So by using the old Scarecrow costume in this way, it ended up being so much better than it was ever going to be. So the first costume test was on the 29th of March. I didn't have the Marsman costume done yet, but I did have the others pretty much done, however the S wasn't yet on Steve's costume. The costume test was so that I could make more concept art and make sure that everything would fit correctly. The samurai costume especially, because that was just a mix of random costume parts that had never been combined yet. Thankfully, it went really well. The samurai costume looked amazing, as well as the Professor Potato costume. The only downside to this test is I accidentally left the flash on my phone, which meant editing the pictures into concept art was quite hard, but it turned out fine, and I know not to do that in future now. Because of this costume test, however, I was able to make Captain Samurai's comic book image used in the intro, so in the end, this costume test was actually essential in the final project. I've written treatments in the past for work experience stuff and for other college projects, but writing one this time around felt new, because it was the first one that I've done for my own projects, and in all of the cases, I found the idea of treatments quite redundant. But with this project, I felt it'd be a really good document to keep the project in check. It felt like a sort of sheet of guidelines to stick to. It had the genre, length, themes, target audience, and so on, and I found it very helpful as it was just something to put all of my thoughts down into. You don't get that with a script. A script is just what the project will be and not what the project is about. When I get to the evaluation and reflection section of this video, the treatment is the document that I can use to look back on and truly determine just how much of a success this project actually is. When it came to writing the script, it was something that I was very comfortable with because I've done it plenty of times in the past. But this is the first creative project I've made with dialogue, so it ended up being so much bigger than everything I've done in the past. Like, it was 21 pages, which is absolutely insane for me. And if you've told me that before starting the project, that the script will be that long, then I think I'd be too scared to start it. I knew exactly what the content would be though. I knew it would have a conversation to set things up at the start, then a fight sequence, and then a conversation at the end to finish it up. And I knew what the character beats should be, so it was quite easy really. It was just finding that through line to guide the characters to where they needed to be while adding in the humour. I wrote the script in chunks so it didn't get too overwhelming. I'd write the first scene, then film it before writing the second scene, and I'm glad I did it that way, otherwise the scope of the project would have gotten absolutely out of hand. I also colour-coded the dialogue for each character in the script so it was easier for me to imagine the scene when reading it back. I actually regret this choice though, because it just took way longer than it otherwise would have in writing it, and when the script was printed it was in black and white, so it was a bit pointless really, and now I know why most scripts aren't like that. But it was a learning point, and something I know not to do from now on. I also had to write an extra scene due to problems on filming on the day, but I'll get more to that later in this video. Overall, the script writing process was quite good, and I learned a lot. I'm really proud of it for writing something that long, and it was written in a way that made it a lot easier when filming, which is the whole point of a formatted script. I don't actually have too much to say about the storyboarding process, as to put it simply, it's just drawing, and I've never found it that helpful. For most filmmakers it's essential, as it shows you what the shots are going to look like, but I knew the shots for this film would be quite basic. Most of the time it's just been shot reverse shot and sticking to the 180-degree rule. There wasn't going to be that crazy camera movements as it was locked down to a tripod for most takes, so creating the storyboard was more about how it was necessary for my grade, and a lot less about how helpful it would be towards the actual filming. If I was to make a project that had more intense camera movements or longer shots, I know it would be more useful, but in this project it just wasn't that important. A film like Noctophobia, which I made last year, is the kind of thing that needs a storyboard because there's no dialogue and the camera is a very large part of telling the story. So basically, creating a storyboard for this project specifically was maybe my least favourite part of the process, because I didn't find it that helpful or enjoyable, but not every part of filmmaking is fun and games, so I can't really complain. Filming was a mixed bag really. The first day went fine, we filmed the conversation scene at the start, and considering the actors involved hadn't done any script readings prior, it went very well. Me and Braxton, who plays Captain Samurai, were in more shots together, and I feel like we had a really good acting chemistry because we could do multiple of our lines in one take, and even improvise when needed. It was actually a really enjoyable experience because I've never filmed dialogue before, and I actually really started getting into character a fair bit. Some of Tom's lines, who plays Steve in the project, took a few tries, and I feel most of that is due to the fact that his shots were filmed separately without me and Braxton to sit across to make it feel more natural. In future, I'll know to try and get as much dialogue done naturally in one long conversation as possible. We had to take a break partway through because the costumes were very hot to be wearing inside, but I brought a lot of water to make sure that I can support the actors as much as possible. So yeah, the first day went fine, but the outside scene with Professor Potato is a massively different story. Originally in the script, Steve shows up to the final fight, and there's a conversation to wrap up the character arcs, but unfortunately, Tom could only stay until 5 PM, and it was 3 PM when we started filming, so we decided to film his shots first in case we didn't have time to film it later in the day. But due to this, when we eventually filmed the rest of the shots, we realised that the locations our characters ended up was different to in Tom's scenes we shot first. If we kept those shots, it would have meant that Marsman, Samurai and Professor Potato magically appeared in different positions in between shots, so for the sake of continuity, we'd need to redo it. And then when we started redoing those shots that we filmed first, it started raining. So due to that fact, I rewrote the entire ending and had it so that Marsman and Samurai go back to the base and have that conversation with Steve there. I think the way the fight ended with the newspaper smashing into frame worked well, but the last conversation scene in the base ended up feeling a bit rushed really, and I would have liked to do it better, but due to deadline constraints, it just wasn't really possible. But the character arc still wrapped up nicely, and it doesn't detract too much from the overall project. Overall, the filming process was incredibly enjoyable for the most part, but when it wasn't, it felt like a nightmare for me. But I worked around the problems and came up with backup plans, so it worked out well. As always, the editing process was my favourite because it's the part where everything comes together. I did it almost immediately after a scene was filmed. I'd have it edited and finished within the day, and then when all the scenes were done, I just combined them all into the finished product. Editing with dialogue this time around felt like so much fun. It was very new and different to me, and it was almost like translating a conversation. Having one shot's audio overlapping a different shot's visuals for a second before the next shot plays to make it feel more natural, and just giving the characters the right amount of breathing room that they needed. It was really fun. The first scene's dialogue felt really real to me. The fight scene and ending did too, but that first conversation just played out so well, and it really needed to, and that was all in the editing process really. The only downside for the editing was that fight scene and realising that the continuity was off and that I had to change things, but as I stated previously, I just wrote a new script for another scene and it ended up fine. But editing was the moment where I realised that it wasn't going to work and it was a bit stressful. But really, I guess that wasn't a problem with editing at all, it was still just the filming. It's just that a lot of times you don't notice problems until you actually get to see it on a big screen and you're trying to make it work.
So.
I'll do my best, but I'm just trying to relax and play Zelda.
I forgot my line.
Who are you? Marsman.
I'm Marsman.
But
That's the line, I'm
No, I'm just trying to relax and play Zelda.
Forgot my line again.
oh my god.
I forgot it already. Well, it's hard for me and Steve to do our job. Oh, fuck. Well, it's hard for me and Steve to do our jobs. Oh, I fucking did it again. Well, it's hard for me and Steve to do our... Oh, fuck. Why is it so hard for me to get this line out? Well, it's pretty difficult for me and Steve to do our jobs when we're down in... Oh, fuck. Okay.
Well, alright, that's fair. Fair enough.
I'll do another take.
Action. Oh, and you need to start coming out on missions with us again.
That's good, but he's dead.
Hey up, Steve.
Hey up.
Why is this still recording? It's been on for How'd that look?
I think Tom was doing it the other way around.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
Oh my god!
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
I'm very happy with this.
Now spin!
1.
Let's watch that. It doesn't look like I'm holding my cock, does it, when I'm holding this?
No.
That's good.
Alright, I'll do my part now. So.
So what?
Hold on, where's the bag ball? Hold on. Oh, I've got a toe cramp.
You right?
Yeah, I'll be right
Oh god, my phone's just started zooming in.
I'm gonna do that again. Oh, I'm actually meant to hit your head.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Oh fuck, I laughed.
Everyone be quiet for a sec.
Ah!
So now I've got the audio.
You're filming to ridicule him.
You don't have to again. Yeah, you can't.
You just take off the boot. It's not that.
Hang on, I'll get his leg. I'll get his arm.
Go, try again.
Oh!
Oh!
Oh, damn you! Come in here, go ahead.
On the 16th of May, I showed the project to a small group of people, as well as the cast, and the reaction was fantastic. It actually got laughs, real, genuine laughs at the jokes, which was one of the things that I said before making this was something that I needed to hear to consider this a success.
Your superhero name's your first name, Steve. God fucking damn it.
So that was one thing that I was so proud of. As I said before, I wasn't too confident in the ending and thought that it could have been a bit better, but watching it with a group it just seemed to flow so much better. I asked people who watched it afterwards and they thought it was fine, and a few people mentioned how it wrapped up their character arcs, which was important to me, because it said that people understood the characters and the storyline completely. People also said that for the level I was working at, that the effects were quite good overall, and I think people thought it was better than they were expecting. It didn't get any review below a 7 out of 10, which for me is great to hear. From left to right on screen it got an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 9 out of 10 and an 8 out of 10. Some people said the dialogue for Captain Samurai was a bit low sometimes, so I fixed that, as well as the intercom's voice. People also said that some of Tom's lines should have gotten another take, but as I stated before, I think that was because his lines were filmed separately. Usually with my films, it feels better watching them by myself, and when I show it to a group I get almost embarrassed as I see the flaws in the project more clearly. But this time around, I actually felt more confident, and I found it more enjoyable. Showing it to this audience was maybe the highlight of the project, as I could see it was a success. But now let's get into the reflection and compare it to the treatment to go into exactly why it was a success. The logline of the treatment was: 3 superheroes struggle with living together while also working as a team. They must defeat their enemies as well as fix problems with each other. And that is exactly what the project is, and the audience that watched it fully recognised that story, so that was definitely successful. The genre was an action comedy, and I was told by the audience that it was very funny and it got a lot of laughs, as well as being told that the action VFX was quite good. So again, that's a success. The estimated length of the project was 10 minutes, and if slightly less, and the final runtime was 9 minutes and 30 seconds, so I really couldn't have been more spot on with that if I tried. The target audience was 15 to 25, the youngest person I showed it to was 17, and the oldest was 22 I believe, so it was right in the middle, and the audience really liked it, so I would say that's also a success. Now going into the production values, I said that the editing was the primary focus for me personally, and the editing is the thing I'm most proud of. The intro and editing the dialogue especially was just great, and I'm quite proud of myself for doing that. I think it really feels like an old TV show, and an enjoyable one at that. The second biggest production value was the characters, and they were definitely all likeable and understandable, as the audience stated. One of the potential problems that I listed was that due to time constraints I may have to cut the intro section from the final project, but thankfully we got that part sorted on the last day of filming, even if some of it was improvised. So I'm very thankful for that, because I feel like the intro is the best part of the project. I also said that filming outside could be a problem due to the audio. It turns out though that the audio wasn't the problem, it was the weather if anything. That was outside of my control, but it was clear from the start that I knew it could be an issue, so I was prepared to expect something happening from filming outside. Looking back overall on the treatment, I achieved exactly what I set out to do, and that was to make a funny short film that feels like an old superhero TV show, with good editing and effects, some action, comedy that gets laughs from people aged 15 to 25. I'm very proud that I was able to accomplish that. I learned a lot about rewriting things when problems occur, and reusing old aspects of failed projects to make for a better project in the long run. I learned how to make films with natural dialogue, which was a big step up for me, and this feels like my best project yet. In conclusion, this project was a major success, as well as a major learning opportunity, and the problem solving and practical skills that I've learned making this is going to be applied to everything else I make in the future. I feel confident now in my character writing skills, and I'm looking forward to making new characters with dialogue in the future now. I also feel so much more comfortable with showing my projects to larger audiences after this got such a good reaction. This is the biggest project that I've ever made, and the work absolutely paid off. I'm proud of myself, and I'm even proud of the cast too. I'm glad this project is out in the world now, and I hope you all enjoy it as much as I do. But that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it helps whoever you may be when making your own projects. But for now, goodbye.